So those who've been following along on Facebook, on LinkedIn, all those other places, I've been doing this for some time, doing it by stage, but now we actually got the entire thing. And this would be like something like a master class. So, what are the 12 stages of the hero's journey in Burning America? This would be helpful if a person wanted to strengthen their writing, because what I've been able to do is to adapt Joseph Campbell's 12 stages to guide creative writing. And so, stick around to the end of the show and this episode, and we've got some giveaways for you. So, in stage one, analyzing Burning America on the best interest of the children, that's available on Amazon, some other places. It's not required to have it, but of course, if you want to pick it up, you will see how I've been able to apply Joseph Campbell. Stage one, the ordinary world. The first stage, the ordinary world, happens to be one of the most essential elements of any story. And what you want to do here is, of course, introduce your character and allow people to see what's the ordinary average day that they're going through. And there's three reasons why writers want to show their protagonists in the ordinary world. Number one, to set up how the conflict disrupts the character's ordinary life. When you open the story within the character's ordinary world, you're establishing their comfort zone, a world that they're complacent with or used to living. Paul, our protagonist in Burning America, is viewed feeding an infant. How many men or fathers have that opportunity? But this is Paul's world. An ordinary world is him as primary caregiver to Paul and Anne's, his wife, their daughter. Don't leave home without it. Chapter 1 introduces us to Paul, the peaceful world he enjoyed as primary caregiver, the beautiful and colorful child's room Katrin, the daughter, enjoyed. Number two, to foreshadow the story to come. The ordinary world at the beginning of a story offers the writer a chance to foreshadow events to come, plant plot and character devices that pay off later within the story, and even allows for the opportunity to present themes and metaphors that will be explored within the narrative. Will the court, the custody industry, and the village of neighbors award Paul custody? Do the courts act in the best interest of the children? These are themes to be explored as we introduced to them. Since the daughter is torn, some would say kidnapped, will the courts, village neighbors, and the system advocate for the child? Will Paul be able to restore their daughter to their home and school? Will Katrin be able to enjoy her first Holy Communion? Three, to create catharsis and empathy. Today's cinematic interpretation of catharsis can be translated as the feeling we feel after the resolution of the story and the protagonist's overall journey. We will view Paul experiencing the trauma of separation and ultimate resolution as the audience identifies with him and empathizes with his plight. We will have a long way to go, but the conflict and trauma will tear Paul from his happy home, and he will have to fight to restore and reconcile their child with home and school. Now, if you move into stage two of the hero's journey in Burning America, one introduces the core concept of the story, two defines the genre of your story, and three begins the process of character development. One introduces the core concept of the story. Paul is faced with a problem, kidnapping and parental alienation that rocks his ordinary world, and he has to decide whether or not to answer that call. Two defines the genre of your story. Paul will be the center of the drama log line to pitch. The pitch has to give the potential buyer a quick cue that this dramatic genre tells us what kind of conflict will ensue. Three begins the process of character development. Paul is a homebody, quiet and introverted, but he must be more decisive and determined to take on the custody industry and the village trying to alienate his daughter from him. What is stage three of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage three, refusal of the call. What stage can come next in your story? The refusal of the call. The hero initially refuses the adventure because of hesitation, fears, insecurity, or any other number of issues. Here I offer three reasons why your protagonist should refuse the call to adventure and how your script or creative story can benefit from that refusal. Number one, to create instant tension and conflict within the story. The refusal of the call to adventure can work within any type of cinematic story structure and narrative or any creative work, even one that doesn't hit all the marks of the Joseph Campbell hero's journey stages. Will Paul have the resources to get his daughter Katrin returned home? And his wife took the family assets by emptying the bank accounts and taking the furniture, everything in the house. Now what? Can Paul navigate the court maze, have enough funds to continue? Can he fight the good fight for the long haul? Two, to showcase the risks and the stakes involved. The best screenplays or creative stories showcase big risks and big stakes that characters must overcome. The refusal of the call to adventure offers you the opportunity to introduce those risks and stakes. Paul is out of his element, but at stake is his daughter's health and safety. He is forced to risk it all and transform his lifestyle to focus on getting their daughter restored to her family home. Three, to create empathy and character depth. Any character can take on an adventure or handle a conflict that is thrown at them. We've seen that time and time again in any action flick. Paul is not a dynamic, extroverted, and social person, but a homebody and primary caregiver. Now we see if he is up to the challenge and react quickly and explosively to the trauma. What is stage four of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage four, meeting the mentor. Along the way, your protagonist and screenplay or creative work may need a mentor. The hero encounters a mentor that can give them advice, wisdom, information, or items that ready them for the journey ahead. Here I offer three things a mentor character can do for your protagonist and your screenplay or creative work. One, create an emotional, empathetic bond between characters. The best stories have heart, and that applies to any genre. And for a story to have heart, the writer needs to create empathy for the characters. Paul has several mentors throughout Burning America. He realizes that he cannot do it alone. Paul looks for support from both of his attorneys, his sister, and his mom. Two, guide the protagonist through the central conflict. When the protagonist is first introduced within their ordinary world, they are in a place of comfort or complacency. The best stories then take that character out of their comfort zone by throwing them into the metaphorical fire of an extreme conflict that rocks their world. Kicked out of his ordinary world, Paul is thrown into a central conflict and seeks guidance in the wisdom of his family and attorneys. Sometimes the character and mentor isn't a character at all, but for Paul, his faith is his guide. Three, help you introduce story elements, themes, and exposition within creative work. Paul does not know how to navigate the legal system, nor alone is he able to combat the custody industry. His faith, family, and attorneys and reveal possibilities and hope that he can survive. What is stage five of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage five, crossing the threshold. At some point at the end of the first act, your story may showcase a moment where your protagonist needs to cross the threshold between their ordinary world and the special world they will be experiencing as their inner or outer journey begins. The hero leaves their ordinary world for the first time and crosses the threshold into adventure. Here I offer three ways crossing the threshold affects your story. One, shifts your story into gear. If we've been introduced to your protagonist through their ordinary world and have watched them finally accept the call to adventure, whether it be an inner or outer emotional or physical journey, it's always nice to offer a moment within the story that shifts everything to the next gear. Initially, Paul engages with a father's rights attorney to get their child returned to Pennsylvania. All is right with the world, correct? Wrong. Paul gets in gear when the judge simply returns their child back to mom. Paul has to increase his efforts. The road to recovery is more precarious than he suspected. Two, introduces the differences between the ordinary world and the special world to come. The special world is the world that the protagonist is about to come across as they deal with the conflict they've been forced to. or have chosen to take on. And it's vital to the story to present a world that is very different from what the protagonist is used to. Yes, some great stories simply showcase a window of time within the character's world, but you want to truly engage a reader and audience. You need to inject as much tension as conflict as you can, and you do that by taking them out of their element. Paul's ordinary world as primary caregiver to their child is over. The special world is the custody industry and parental alienation. Paul is out of his element. Three, begins your protagonist character arc. Character arcs are a must. Most people want to see a character change throughout a story, a transformation that they undergo as they take on the conflict at hand. When your protagonist physically or emotionally crosses a threshold, you're letting the reader or audience know that their character arc has begun. Paul runs into a corrupt cop, a slanderous neighbor, lying and incompetent psychs and counselors, and a Kafkaesque court system. How will Paul survive? Participants should be interested in his plight. What is stage 6 of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage 6 tests, allies, and enemies. And it's within this unknown that the protagonist faces many tests and meets their allies and enemies. 1. Tests. Within the hero's journey structure, this stage is a vital part of your protagonist's journey. Conflict is everything. Without conflict, there's no story arc, no character exploration. So while this is a stage represented in every hero's journey structure application, it's also a necessary component to any story that you will tell, using the hero's journey structure or not. Your story doesn't merely entail a character dealing with a single conflict. Paul has an obvious test. How does he get his daughter returned to the family home? But is that it? No. Paul has to navigate the custody court, the machinations of the legal system, and the ongoing tests to endure dealing with each one of these barriers. 2. Allies. Along with the tests that your protagonist faces, they're going to need some help along the way. That's where introducing allies comes into play. Initially, both of Paul's attorneys seem likely allies. How reliable they are and how long they last, though, will be questionable. However, Paul's family, mom, dad, and sister, will prove to be reliable allies. Perhaps even Katrin can be viewed as an ally despite her tender age. 3. Enemies. With the mention of enemies, we come full circle within this hero's journey stage. Enemies are there to test the protagonist. They offer the necessary conflict that should be present within all stories. While allies give us, and the protagonist, hope, enemies challenge that hope and create a more enthralling plot. It might seem obvious that Anne, Paul's wife, is an enemy, but is that it? What about the intriguing Selena character? What antagonistic role does she play? Many stories feature an antagonist, but Paul has at least two, Anne and Selena, not to mention additional enemies in the village court system and hostility that he has to face head on. What is stage 7 of the hero's journey in Burning America? 1. Allows the audience and protagonist to catch their breath. Paul seems to catch his breath with a feminist attorney, Deborah. Paul's attorney has a plan of attack, and Deborah's boy, her paid-off psychiatrist, Paul has it made. 2. Offers time to reflect, review, and plan ahead. Paul did not do well as first attorney, a father's rights attorney, nor the first psychiatrist, but now we can regroup, reflect, review, and plan for success. Paul has it made. It's in the bag. The psychiatrist is on board, and the best attorney in the region works for Paul. 3. Creates tension, builds anticipation, and escalates tension. At this point in Burning America, Paul seems to have wrestled the tiger to the ground. He appears to have events well in hand, and the reader should feel tension, expecting a positive resolution, and anticipation should build towards a successful conclusion. But, of course, with increasing tension, will it? What is stage 8 of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage 8, the ordeal. 1. Write the ordeal as if it were the climax of the story. Paul's ordeal appears to be at an end. He has the best attorney in town, a feminist, and the psychiatrist is in his attorney's pocket. Surely Katrin, his daughter, will be home soon. 2. Kill the protagonist's darlings. It turns out that Dr. Kitchen, Deborah's boy, and her paid-off psych does not react realistically to Katrin's love of her dad. The child's illustration on the cover of Burning America show us what she drew. Dad, as primary caregiver, cradling her in his arms while mom stands off to the side. Paul loses again, and his darlings, Deborah and the psych, are of no help. 3. Give opportunities within the ordeal for the protagonist to be resurrected. Deborah is about to bail out just when Paul sees light as the custody trial is about to begin. He documented all he could, struggled for over 3 years, but now Deborah, his attorney, is leaving town and abandoning him. Moreover, Paul demurs walking into court with Deborah's successor, a man. Paul will get railroaded if he walks into court with a man representing him. What is stage 9 of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage 9, the reward. And after your hero has gone through all of the ordeal, you may want or need to reward them with something that they can use to take on the final threat they will face during the climax of your story. Here are 5 types of rewards that your protagonist may need to prevail at the end of their journey. Special weapon. If you're writing in the action, science fiction, thriller, or fantasy genres, your character may need a special weapon, which Joseph Campbell had referred to as the sword, to defeat their greatest conflict. This physical manifestation of the reward can also be used in other genres, but it's far more prevalent in ones that involve action and adventure. 2. An elixir. An elixir is a magical or medicinal potion that can heal a wounded ally or land. During the peak of the story, the hero and their allies usually find themselves in peril, the lowest of lows. An elixir can be something that heals them enough to prevail in the end. 3. Knowledge. Knowledge is often mightier than any sword. It can be a fantastic tool to acquire to defeat a foe. It can drive a protagonist's internal need to succeed. It can inform them of the information they require to solve a final riddle or devise a certain plan of attack. In Burning America, Paul obtains knowledge from 2 attorneys, his family, in particular his mother and sister, and perhaps more arguably from Katrin. Knowledge allows him to proceed as he needs to succeed and carry on the fight toward the reward, Katrin returning home. 4. Experience. Sometimes protagonists have to experience an event or moment that opens their eyes and gives them the confidence that they need to prevail. To a lesser extent, but still relevant in Burning America, is the experience that Paul enjoys to encourage him from time to time throughout his ordeal. 5. Reconciliation. When a protagonist reconciles with a love interest, as we see so often in romantic comedies and love stories, that reward can help them to conquer any emotional conflict that they've been facing. This reward is yet another outstanding option for dramatic stories, but it can also work with genre flicks as well. The reward offers the protagonist the added boost they need to propel themselves towards the conflict and through it as they face during the climax of the story, where they are facing their toughest challenge, be it physical or emotional. A special weapon, an elixir, some knowledge, an experience, or reconciliation are the 5 types of rewards that heroes need to prevail. What is stage 10 of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage 10, the road back. Once they've attained the reward, it's time for the hero to get on the road back to their ordinary world. But what is the road back, and how can this stage develop your third act? More conflict, higher stakes. The road back is the moment of your screenplay or creative work that leads your character towards the final climax. They've survived the ordeal, which is the midpoint of your story. They've gained a special weapon, elixir, piece of knowledge, eye opening experience, or some form of reconciliation that they know will help them face the final conflict to come before they can go back to their ordinary world. This is the launching point of your third act, where you transition from the second and venture into the final stretch of your protagonist's journey. The ordeal is the first major conflict they face, usually written as a false climax where things change and the conflict evolves. The road back is where the protagonist sees the light at the end of the tunnel that faces yet another challenge, this time with higher stakes. In Burning America, the ordeal and the false climax is when Paul thinks the second psychiatrist and feminist attorney will get Katrin home, but they do not. Now Paul faces a custody trial, knowing that mothers win 92% of contested custody cases. What chance does he have? The ordeal is not over. Paul loses his favored feminist attorney, and the second antagonist, Selena, emerges as a countervailing force against Paul. Moreover, Anne reveals serious health issues which will complicate proceedings. Showing the light at the end of the tunnel, there's sometimes a slight lull in the action or conflict between the ordeal and the road back, a moment or sequence where the protagonist regroups with their allies or collects their thoughts, leading into the continued hurdles and obstacles they face before the final the conflict. This offers the reader and audience a chance to regroup and breathe after the action or drama of the ordeal. You want to give the character some form of accomplishment or hope. And then, as any good reader should, you want to throw them even more conflict at them, just as they are about to believe that their journey is almost complete. When you watch most films or read a creative work, you'll feel this shift within the story to the point where it feels as if we've turned a page from the second to the third. Facing a custody trial, Paul has a bit of light in the character of Clarissa, Deborah's assistant, and the female attorney to help keep him on a level playing field during the custody proceedings. Setting up the third act. If there's a specific purpose that writers are looking for when considering this stage of the hero's journey, it's all about setting up the third act. When the hero has faced the ordeal, they've experienced the biggest conflict of their journey thus far, but now they've managed to survive it. We need now to flip the page to the third act by introducing more conflict and upping the stakes. And even more important, we need to understand what's at risk going into the third act and eventual climax, the resurrection. The road backstage of the story structure allows you the opportunity to reset and show us what has changed, how it affects the protagonist, and how their allies, if any, and what they have overcome to prevail at the end. Paul has to overcome Selena, have proper representation for the custody trial, and grasp that the judge declares the war is over and Paul will face more serious consequences. What is stage 11 of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage 11, the resurrection. The climax of your hero's journey encompasses the resurrection stage. But what does that stage entail, and what does it have to do with your hero's resurrection? It begins with the highest of stakes. If you've employed the road back stage of the hero's journey within your story, you've done the necessary work to set up the high stakes. And make no mistake, the climax of your story has to have the protagonist dealing with the highest stakes they've ever experienced. It's the big fight, the final showdown, the emotional confrontation. Everything that your protagonist has been preparing for throughout their entire journey has led up to this final moment or sequence. How about Paul's resurrection? Deborah, his attorney, is called to an emergency meeting. What could this be about? Paul has no idea, but Selena, a neighbor and antagonist, along with Anne, Paul's wife, is awarded custody. How could this be? For 3.5 years, Paul has been battling Anne, the custody industry of judges, attorneys, and psychs. But now, with no examination of her background, neither Paul nor Anne, but the neighbor, walks off with their child. Hero resurrected. The best type of story showcases a character arc that culminates to a real transformation. If you follow the stages of the hero's journey within your story, there's a reason we show the protagonist in their ordinary world to start. We need to see the beginning of their arc. Paul is transformed from a confused father to a battling machine. He will get his child Katrin restored whole and home. Catharsis is key. Cinematic catharsis is the feeling we feel after the resolution of the story and the protagonist's overall journey. You've experienced it when you've watched a movie or read a screenplay that stayed with you afterward, when you've walked out of the theater or closed that script or book and felt truly changed or affected somehow. That's the magic of a fantastic story, leaving the reader and audience truly touched, affected, and sometimes changed. Catharsis. The import of Burning America is catharsis. We've traveled the road that Paul tread on his ordinary world as primary caregiver to triumphant father. Paul inherits the prized family relic, a 1957 Buick Special, and Paul's arc is complete. 2 generations, Paul and Katrin's are whole. What is stage 12 of the hero's journey in Burning America? Stage 12, the return. The climax of your hero's journey encompasses the resurrection stage. And once they accomplish that, you can have your protagonist return to their ordinary world. Here are 3 reasons why your hero should make that return. 1, to have the story come full circle. The reader and audience are on this ride with your protagonist. They empathize with them. The story creates a cathartic reaction. We want to see the story resolved. We want to witness some closure so that we know the character's journey has ended. So, what better way to accomplish that than letting them go back to their ordinary world to either flaunt their success or show people they've changed for the better? At the beginning of Burning, Paul was primary caregiver to their child, Katrin. In the return stage, Paul is reunited to Katrin and she is made whole by returning to the loving arms of her father, but only after Paul has faced and overcame the ordeal stage. 2, to complete their character arc. When we follow a character for a long period of time, we want to see their character grow, change, or better themselves. It offers the reader and audience a sense of closure and catharsis. When we put the protagonist back into their ordinary world, it makes the reader and audience wonder how they'll react. Have they changed? Will they fall into the same pattern they were in when they were introduced in their ordinary world? Paul is wiser to the ways of the world after the ordeal. The last line of the story concludes with how Paul is ready to parent Katrin in single parenting freedom. He is no longer subject to the restrictions of the court, deceased wife, Selena the neighbor, or legal system. Paul is free. 3, to allow the reader and audience to live vicariously. Because catharsis is so vital to the cinematic or creative work experience, that's why people go to the movies or read books. Having the hero return to their ordinary world triumphant offers the reader and audience a chance to feel the glory of that return. And if it's not glory, it's a sense of calm, knowing that everything is going to be okay for the character they lived vicariously through. The last song closing out the novel summarizes the journey Paul has been on. The Ian Hunter song intones, "We've been living in purgatory, and anything's better than this." Paul and Katrin united home are going to be fine. The ordeal has been overcome. There is a tragic death, but Paul will return Katrin to her ordinary world of stability and love. All is calm. Well, that's it for the 12 stages of the hero's journey in Burning America. If you haven't got a copy of Burning America, check it out. It's on Amazon. It's available in some other places as well. But it tells you how to improve your writing. Now, if you listen to the end, a couple bonuses for you. Not only can you get a copy of Burning America, but ask me for the hero's journey worksheet. So if you want to improve your writing, do better at it, and strengthen your creative work, get in touch with me. I can help and I can show you using the Hero's Journey worksheet and stages to improve your writing. That's it for this particular edition of the Doctor of Digital Podcast, especially looking at the hero's journey in Burning America. Until next time, Deus Vult.